Good morning, everyone, and welcome to my channel. So, when the story about Justin Fairfax hit, it's been all over the news. I've been watching, some of the YouTube channels who are talking about this situation, and I had no intentions whatsoever of talking about this on my channel, even though it does touch on mental illness. But then I decided that I will, and I'm going to tell you why I did choose to talk about it after all. So, as a little background information, if you're not familiar with the story, Justin Fairfax was back like 2018, 2019 time frame. He was the lieutenant governor of Virginia. I was familiar with him before this story hit. He recently murdered his wife. He had two teenage kids in the house, and then he committed suicide. He did all this with his kids in the house. It happened like maybe, overnight, like maybe midnight. And Justin, he was lieutenant governor, and then he came close to being the governor of Virginia because at the time, Ralph Northam was the governor of Virginia. And Ralph Northam, some pictures came out of him where he was dressed in blackface. So I just scratch my head because I don't get why people are so obsessed with black people and doing things to hurt black people, although they probably don't know very many black people, and black people have never done anything to them. I can't imagine just waking up in the morning and deciding, oh, there's a Halloween party tonight. I'm going to go in whiteface, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that just to be mean to white people. I don't get why people are so obsessed with targeting black people, but that's a whole nother video. So Ralph Northam was being encouraged to step down as governor, and if that happened, Justin Fairfax would have became governor. And then it was like out of nowhere, because interesting enough, this did not come up when Justin Fairfax was running for lieutenant governor. But out of nowhere, when he was going to slide into the governor position, two women that he knew back when he was in his 20s maybe, or definitely when he was a college student, at least one of them said that he had sexually assaulted him. To this day, those charges have never been substantiated. They've never been proven or disproven. And so, long story short, Justin, he continued in his position as lieutenant governor. Ralph Northam continued in his position as governor. But then when Fairfax's tenure as lieutenant governor was over, his career was ruined. He was, I think he was an attorney. He couldn't even get a job in a law firm after this happened. And so his wife was a successful dentist. They have two kids going to private school, but Justin was deteriorating. People who knew him said he was depressed. He started drinking, and I guess he was taking out his anger on his wife. So anyway, I say that to say that Roland Martin did a show recently about this topic, and he was focusing on black men and their mental health. I didn't know this, but apparently black men have the highest suicide rate in this country. I wasn't aware of that, but I'm not surprised. And then I'm also not surprised that it's not being addressed. I'm not surprised at this, but it was noted on the show that black women have the lowest suicide rate in this country. I'm not surprised at that at all. And I think that is because as women in general, we talk about our issues. So Roland had two black male psychiatrists on the show, and I thought they gave some really good advice. And one of them had mentioned that, with black women, for example, like you can be at work, and this has actually happened to me. You can be at work and a female coworker may say, and has said to me, hey, come walk to the bathroom with me. And that's kind of like code for, I want to talk to you about something. And so you get up and you go talk. I have a loved one that has a serious mental illness, and I have discussed it with people. At first, I didn't because of the stigma attached to mental illness. I wouldn't talk about it. But after I got involved in the National Alliance of Mental Illness and started going to support groups and classes and things like that, I dropped the stigma. And now, if the opportunity arises, I do talk to people about my family situation and how we are addressing a loved one's mental illness. And so I have talked to people when the situation, I'm not just blabbing about it to anybody, but when the situation arises, I have talked to people about it. And then just recently, just this week, I'm retired now, but a former co-worker who I had talked about it to years ago called me, and she said, my aunt, her son was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and he was doing good, but now he's off his medication. Can you talk to her? And so I did talk to her, and I gave her some advice. And when we ended our conversation, the aunt ended up texting me later and said that she was glad we had talked, and she was definitely going to use some of the resources that I had steered her to. Back to the episode of Roland Martin's podcast with the two psychiatrists. One of the psychiatrists mentioned that it is standard practice for psychiatrists to ask the question of their patients on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you feel? And if the patient says, on a scale of 1 to 10, I think I'm a 3, then he will ask the patient, okay, what can we do to get you to a 4 or maybe a 5? And I like the fact that he didn't go all the way up to an 8, a 9, or a 10. The psychiatrist didn't ask, how can we get you way up there? But it was like taking baby steps. What can we do to get you to a 4 or a 5? And the person might say, let's take the Justin Fairfax situation. The person might say, well, I'm arguing with my wife all the time, and I want that to stop. And the psychiatrist might work with them to brainstorm ideas. What can you do differently so you're not arguing with your wife all the time? So you take baby steps to address that issue, and then you go on to the next issue. And I really liked the idea of doing that. And not only do I want to ask my loved one that same question, my loved one, and even my husband, because he's a male, and I don't think he has addressed any issues that he has had in the distant or recent past. And I would like to use that technique with him to open up a discussion about his mental health. But I also think women, especially caregivers, especially, what about you? What if you ask that question of yourself? I asked that question of myself on a scale of 1 to 10. How do I feel? And I would have to say a 5. And when I thought about it, I only give myself a 5, not because of issues that I personally have, because years ago when I was a young mother, I was going through a lot. And some of the things that I was going through is that my life was focused on my family, my kids, and making sure they were taken care of and trying to be the best mother that I could be. I was, when I went to college, I had friends, but the two women that I was closest to, we all went our separate ways after college, and we still keep in touch, but it wasn't like I was seeing them every day like I was when we were in college. I had friends at work, but they didn't live near me. So after work and on the weekend, I didn't see these people. So one, I was dealing with loneliness because as much as I love my kids, it would have been nice to have some adult conversation with other women. And I didn't have that. So one, I was dealing with loneliness. And then also, my spouse is an alcoholic, and there was domestic violence involved in our marriage. And so I did end up going to Al Anon, and I used some of the techniques that I learned there. I learned a whole lot from Al Anon. And so my spouse did eventually stop drinking. He quit cold turkey. That was over 10 years ago. But then when my kids were teenagers, to be honest, I felt like I have PTSD from this, even to this day, from dealing with teenagers. That was just such a rocky period, having to deal with teenagers, and then the mental illness came into play, and it made everything that much worse. But now, fast forward to my current situation, especially since COVID, I have been, and my kids are older, they're young adults, so I have focused on myself. I have started a meetup group. I've met a lot of people through this group, and once we finish our activity, some of us get together and we go out to lunch. I've gone on a trip with these people before. I'm doing a lot of things to focus on myself. So me personally, I'm okay. But the reason why I'm only giving myself a 5 is because I wake up every morning and I go throughout each day with a black cloud that's following me, because I have an adult child that has a serious mental illness. And every day, when I wake up in the morning, that's the first thing that I think of is, he's okay more or less now because he's medicated. He's alive but not really thriving. He, because of medication, he feels really lethargic. And most likely at some point in this year, I would not be surprised. I'm expecting him to go off his medication, and then what's going to happen then? So I have that black cloud that's following me every day. But the bottom line is, I can only, there's a saying that goes something like, have the courage to change what you can change, accept what you can't change, and bless me. I want to be blessed with the wisdom to know the difference. And so that's where I am right now. I pray for him every day. I pray over the situation. But at the end of the day, I can't change him. I can't make him take medication. I can't make him do take medication or suggest something that's better, like Cobenfy, that they say has fewer side effects. At the end of the day, all of this is going to be up to him. So I am going to ask my son that has been diagnosed with the mental illness. He's coming over on Friday. I'm retired now, and so I have been spending a lot of time with him. Last week he came over because he has his own place now, but he came over. He gets lonely there, and so he came over last week. He spent several days with us. Yesterday, my husband and I went and picked him up. We went and got lunch together, and he came home and visited for a little while before he went back to his own apartment. And he's coming over this weekend, and I do want to have a talk with him, like on a scale. I want to ask him on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you? Because I want to do this while he's medicated. And so I want to ask him, how do you feel, and what can I do to help you? What can we do to get you up to a higher level? I want to have that discussion with him just to see what he says and if he will communicate that with me. But at the end of the day, caregivers, you really have to nurture yourself, take care of yourself, and think about, you know, what you can do to make sure your mental health is good, because you can only do so much for somebody else, and they're going to do whatever they do, and you don't have any control over it. So I hope all this makes sense, and in some kind of way it is helpful to you all. Anyway, have a good day. Till the next video, take care, and I'll see you later.